Hi, welcome to Rock and Metal Invasion. My name is Steve. Coming up on the show today, I'm doing cover songs by hair metal bands, part 2, my favourite and least favourite. So obviously this is a follow-up from part 1 where I looked at some albums in my collection by what we might call hair metal bands. You know, there's hard rock bands from the 80s, even early 90s. So I showed albums where they had songs or a song on it that was actually originally done by a different artist, so cover songs. Sometimes the song that they covered is quite a well-known song, sometimes a little bit obscure, and sometimes the song that they're covering becomes a hit. Sometimes it didn't, sometimes it's not even released as a single, it's just an album cut. But it's a bit of variety, but I just thought I'd show you a few more. So let's get into it. This is quite a well-known one, of course, Van Halen, their classic debut album, You Really Got Me, originally by the Kinks. They do a great version. The original, of course, is a classic, but it's a good song. One of my favorites from that album, even though it is a cover song and there's so many other good songs on the album. I do enjoy that one. Next one, Ugly Kid Joe from America's Least Wanted. Now, they had a big hit with Everything About You, but the cover song on here is Cats in the Cradle, and it's a really great song. I like the original, it was done by a guy called Harry Chaplin in 1974. When I first heard it, and I thought, I know this song. I actually thought it was Cat Stevens, but no, it's maybe Cat Stevens did do it at some point. But originally, I think it was Harry Chaplin. And it's a good song. It was actually a bit of a hit for them as well. So this was a pretty successful album for them, and considering the fact it came out in 1991 or going out even maybe 1992. They did pretty well, but as I've said before, I think bands like Ugly Kid Joe, who, whether you agree or not, possibly get lumped into the hair metal category, they were still successful because they didn't take themselves too seriously. So I think, like I've said before, like a band like Ugly Kid Joe and Jackal were still able to sort of put out albums and be relatively successful in the early 90s and into the mid-90s because they didn't take themselves too seriously. So, and they had some hit songs, with Everything About You and, of course, the cover song here, Cats in the Cradle. And I like it. It's a good song. So a couple of favourites there to start off with. Not one of my favourites, not one of my favourite Motley Crue albums. This is Girls, Girls, Girls. So they do a cover of Jailhouse Rock, and they've got in brackets live, so supposedly it's live. It doesn't matter if it's live or in the studio. I'm really probably not interested in hearing Motley Crue cover an Elvis Presley song. A bit of a weird choice. I think they were really running out of ideas. They just probably needed to come up with something that could, finish off the album. It's the last song on the album. It's just not really... I mean, to be honest, I'm not an Elvis Presley fan, but it's not like really they make it any more interesting on their version of it. So, and like I say, it's not one of my favourite Motley Crue albums. I like Wild Side, and there's a couple of other okay songs, but I think probably not them at their peak. Although it was it was a successful album for them. I guess having a couple of good singles helped. Next one, Little Caesar. Now this is their debut album, produced by Bob Rock, actually, I think. And this has some good songs on it. I enjoy In Your Arms and From the Start. But the cover on this album is a song called Chain of Fools. And you can kind of tell it's a cover song because it doesn't sound like something that was coming out at the time. It's originally a song done by Aretha Franklin. It's pretty good. This is one of those ones where it's like, it's okay. I don't mind it. They did do a music video. It was released as a single. I don't think they had much success with it. And I don't think it's a good reflection necessarily of the band. They had sort of, they were kind of like, you could put them in the category of that sort of biker sort of hard rock sort of metal sound that was, Circus of Power is another band that comes to mind that had some sort of similarities too. And they had some other songs, I think, that really fit the band perhaps better. Might have been better choices as a single. But anyway, it's okay. It's okay. But like I say, not a bad album. Didn't have big time success. They did release another album after that, but that was in 1992, and then of course after the 92, I think they probably just broke up, and they got back together, I think, and released at least one album I know of, but I haven't really followed them too much recently. Next band, Leather Wolf, and I think this is their debut album. They had a mini album, I think, prior to this, or an EP prior to this. And they've got a song on here called Bad Moon Rising, which is originally a Creedence Clearwater Revival song. I mean, obviously, I'm familiar with the original, but when I heard this version by Leather Wolf, I thought, yeah, I know this song, but actually I didn't know straight away who the band it was that actually did the original. And I have to say, I think I probably prefer the original. They definitely make it heavier. I don't know if that necessarily in this case makes it better. I think the song itself is okay. I don't love it, and they don't make it any better. So, I mean, I guess it's one of those situations where if you don't really like the song, another band covers it, unless they do manage to make it better, it's not really the band's fault that it's not something that you particularly like. So, I mean, yeah, they did make it a bit heavier. But they didn't make it better for me. But there we go, Leather Wolf. And actually, with Leather Wolf, I probably prefer the Street Ready, the follow-up album to that one. All right, next one. This is one of my favourites. This is Lion and Trouble in Angel City. So this is their second and final album. And there's a song on here called Lock Up Your Daughters. Now, when I heard this song, I thought this was one of their songs. I didn't know it was actually a cover of a Slade song. It sounds like very much like a sort of a hair metal, hard, 80s hard rock kind of sound. Really catchy, but rocks, and I think it's a great song. And I was only just finding out later on that it's actually a cover song. It's a Slade song, and I've heard the Slade version. I don't think the Slade version was a hit or anything that I know of it, but the Slade version's good too. It's just a good song, and so Lock Up Your Daughters. But I don't know that. I think that once this album came out, it was pretty much almost the end of the band. Not long after that, of course, Doug Aldrich is on guitar on this, and they had another album prior to this, and of course, they're quite well known for being on the Transformers soundtrack as well. But yeah, Lock Up Your Daughter is one of the best songs on this album, and I actually prefer this one, their second album, than their first one. Talking of Slade, now this is quite right. This is Wild, Young, and Crazy. You might not have seen this before, I'm not sure. This is actually just a compilation album, so it's like compilation of Quite Right's, I guess, what you call greatest hits or something like that. So it's got two songs on here, Come On Feel the Noise and Mama, We're All Crazy Now. Both of them are Slade songs. So Come On Feel the Noise on not the debut album, in theory it's their third album, but their debut 80s album where, after sort of Randy Rhoads, and that was a bit of a hit for them, of course, Come On Feel the Noise. But yeah, originally a Slade song, and then on their next album, they thought, well, it worked the first time, let's do it again. So they did Mama, We're All Crazy Now, which is also a Slade song. Personally, I prefer the originals. I didn't necessarily particularly love their cover songs, but of course they did have a hit with it. But not two of my favourite Quiet Riot songs. But there we go. And next up, this is now I showed this album last time. This is Girl, and I showed it because they cover Kiss, and they cover the Kiss song Do You Love Me? But what's interesting about this album, and I did mention it too on my previous episode on cover songs by hair metal bands, there's two songs on here that end up being covered by hair metal bands, and the first one I'm going to talk about is Lillian X. So they have a great song on here called My Number, which was on the Girl album that I showed before, She Agreed, and a really great song. I think initially when I got this album, that was my favourite song on the album, and again, one of those ones where I didn't even realise, it's not even one of their songs. It does sound a little bit different to some of the rest of the songs on the album, but I didn't even know it was a cover song at first, and probably now I do really like My Number, but I don't know actually if it is my favourite song on this album, because this album for me is just like every song's so great. Hard to kind of narrow it down to one album, but I think just for instantaneous, like, I like that song, that was quite instant for me, that song, My Number. And it has a little intro by Vanity. I don't know if you remember Vanity from the 80s. She does the little intro talk at the start, and then the riff comes in. Yeah, really good stuff. I think they improve the song from how it originally was done by Gil. The Gil version's good, but I think it's even better with Lillian X. So yeah, it's a favourite. And another song that was on the Girl album and features the same vocalist, Phil Lewis. So Hollywood Tease. So Hollywood Tease was on the Girl album. Phil Lewis was the vocalist, and he's the vocalist in this band. So I guess he's suggested this song to LA Guns, and they said yep, and it fits really well with. It's interesting, isn't it? You know, Girl were a UK band released in early '80s, and then he comes to LA, joins the LA Guns, and they put out the song Hollywood Tease that had been recorded in the early '80s, and it sounds like a totally fits the hair metal sound of the late '80s. So it's a good song, and yeah, they do a good version of it. So yeah, I like that one. Next up, now this is Bang Tango and Ain't No Jive live. Now this is a live album, so from time to time, I guess same with 12-inch singles or 7-inch singles. Sometimes there'll be a B-side, and sometimes that B-side might be a cover song. So they do a cover song on here, but it is a live version. They're all live songs. So 20th Century Boy by T-Rex. There's a version of that. It's okay. I quite like the song, the original, and I like their version. It's good, but there is also a music video. So there's a music video of them doing the song 20th Century Boy, and it doesn't sound live, so it's almost like there is a studio version of 20th Century Boy, but I don't have it, or I don't know where it exists, but there is a music video for it. And yeah, it's on this. This album is actually just a 5-track live EP, even, I guess you could call it. But and interestingly enough, they did this is their second live album or live EP. They did another one as well prior to their debut album coming out, which is kind of unusual for a band that never particularly huge. But yeah. Anyway, that's that one. Pretty good. Next one, like one of my all-time favorite cover songs by one of my all-time favorite bands. They are the number one band in when I did my top 40 of bands that have 4 letters in their name. So yes, I'm talking about Wasp, and the cover song on here, I Don't Need No Doctor. Now when I heard this song, I thought, this is just totally like a Wasp song. Great riff, and yeah, I just thought brilliant song by Wasp. Actually, the first time I heard this song was when I saw the music video. And the music video is from a live concert. So it's actually, it's from In the Raw, basically. It's a music video in the Raw. So it's different to the studio, slightly different to the studio version. I don't know how much different. Maybe they just added even some crowd noise. I don't know. But yeah, it doesn't sound all that much different. But that was how I first heard it, when I saw the music video. And then, of course, found out, it's actually on this album. But yeah, the song I Don't Need No Doctor is originally actually done by Ray Charles, like, I don't know, back in the 60s or something, written by Ashford and Simpson, and then it got covered by Humble Pie, and the Humble Pie version is much closer to the Wasp version. In fact, the Humble Pie version, I checked it out online, and it's pretty good too. It's like, especially for the time, and it was like early 70s they put that out. It's kick-ass. So, but yeah, and this is kick-ass as well. So, yeah, great song. I wouldn't say I'm a particularly big fan of the Ray Charles version. I'm not that familiar with it, to be honest. But yeah, I like the Humble Pie, and I like the Wasp version. It's a great song. All right. Next up, Winger. Now, I've talked about Winger a little bit on my channel. I do like the band. I like most of their albums, but not a big fan of Purple Haze. So they cover Purple Haze on this one. I don't know, I think Jimi Hendrix, it's a pretty interesting choice if you're going to try and cover a Jimi Hendrix song, especially, I think, quite a sort of iconic song like Purple Haze. It's not bad, I think they do a perfectly okay job of it, but yeah, I prefer the original, and I think it should be left alone, but I know people who like it, but and that's cool, but yeah, not a big fan. Like I say, I'm happy to hear it. It's not like I listen to it and don't enjoy it, but I didn't feel like it needed to be covered. Right, next one. Now, unfortunately, I don't enjoy hearing these ones. They didn't need to be covered. The song didn't need to be covered, but also I don't particularly enjoy hearing it either. And that is Your Mama Don't Dance. And also, what's even worse, there's 2 hair metal bands. Not again, I'm using that term loosely. 2 at least bands from the 80s who covered it. Poison. They did a version of Your Mama Don't Dance, and it's actually a hit. I don't know who is buying this stuff, But anyway, I mean, I like this album much better than their debut. There's some good songs, but yeah, I don't particularly like Your Mama Don't Dance. But interestingly enough, they did that song, and originally it was done by Kenny Loggins, Missina. I'm not sure who the Missina guy is, but Loggins and Missina. They did the original version, but actually before Poison did it, Y&T did it on their Down for the Count album. Their version is no better or worse than Poison. It's, yeah, I mean, if a song's not good, as far as, like, for me, I don't enjoy the song. It really probably doesn't matter who covers it. I think it would be a challenge to make that song good. So, but interesting that they did a version of it. Yeah, I don't think it was released as a single or anything, but then, yeah, Poison decided to do a version of it. I think it was probably like their fourth single from that album, but they did have a bit of success with it. All right, next one, I'm going to go with a band called Omen. This is Escape to Nowhere. And again, this is another example where a band has covered, where there's more than one band who covered the song. So I'm talking about Radar Love by Golden Earring. Now, this song actually originally came out in 1973. Pretty good. I like the original. And yeah, Omen do a pretty good job of it as well. So yeah, quite acceptable. Quite enjoy hearing it. I don't mind hearing it. And of course, White Lion probably have the more well-known version, or the well-known cover version. They actually have a music video as well. This is probably one of the first three, probably their weakest. Sorry, first four albums. It's probably the weakest of the four, but in my opinion. There are some good songs, and I don't mind Radar Love. Like I said, there was a music video for it, but yeah, it's okay. So they'll put that in the okay category. Now this one's a bit of a, I don't know if I should say guilty pleasure, but I'm not sure it's one I'm supposed to like. But this is Saxon and Ride Like the Wind, and I enjoy this. I like the original. Christopher Cross did the original. I think Christopher Cross is kind of like the yacht rock. He's kind of yacht rock, right? So, and I've heard that term being used, and I've heard some of the bands and songs that fit that category, and I was like, yeah, I think I kind of like a bit of yacht rock. But anyway, Saxon, they do a version of it, and I enjoy it. I think it's a good song, and I like their version of it. So, yeah, and I like this album, and I know this for some people. This is where Saxon, maybe it wasn't even this album, maybe it was Innocence Is No Excuse even, or even before that, I'm not sure. We're getting around that time where a lot of Saxon fans don't particularly like their albums so much, but for me this is when I kind of started getting into Saxon. It was around this album and Innocence Is No Excuse, so they're kind of my first experience of Saxon. So again, sometimes that helps you sort of like it more than what maybe someone who'd been a fan from the start might have. But anyway, I Like the Wind. It's the cover song from that album. And next one I'm talking about, Excess or Areas by Shai. I like this album actually. It took a while to grow on me, but I do like it. And it's I think it's produced by Neil Kernan. I thought Don Dokken had something to do with it as well, but maybe it's just some songwriting. Maybe it helps with songwriting. But the cover song on here is Devil Woman, which is originally a Cliff Richard song. Really good. I mean, I got to be honest. I love the original. I really love the Cliff Richard version. Cliff Richard's probably another guilty pleasure. Yeah, I'm not going to go into the Cliff Richard songs I like, but I've got a few in my head I'm thinking about that I think actually they're pretty good songs. Especially in the 80s, early 80s, he came out with some good songs. But anyway, so Devil Woman, I like the original and I like their version of it. So here we go. Now the next one's a bit of a surprise. Tiger Tails. Now this is not from their album. This is from a 12-inch single. So the single's Heaven. And this is an example where they've got some B-sides and they end up being cover songs. But interesting choices for cover songs. So this came out in, I think it's around 1990. Yeah, and they are covering Creeping Death by Metallica and Peace Sells by Megadeth. So really unusual for what is they're totally a hair metal band. I mean, if some of these bands, okay, I understand, you probably wouldn't necessarily call them hair metal bands, but Tiger Tails, come on. I mean, they totally got the image. The sound's pretty much in the hair metal category. And they're covering thrash metal, basically, thrash metal bands. So Creeping Death and Peace Cells, and I think they're fairly close to the original. They don't make them hair metal. They stick pretty close to the original version, I think. And yeah, it's good, they're good songs, so they do a pretty good version of them. So, but it's just kind of interesting that it's a hair metal band doing thrash metal. Maybe that was a bit of a strategy on their part. So, because a lot of the times the hair metal bands would sort of be, the thrash metal fans would call them posers or whatever, or pussies or something like that. And so that maybe they were trying to sort of win over some of the thrash metal guys and get them to sort of get into the band as well. But I don't know. But interesting. And yeah, we're nearly coming to the end now. So this is Rat from their debut EP. And the song on here is Walking the Dog, which is basically Rat covering Aerosmith, who were covering the Rolling Stones, who were covering the original Rufus Thomas, who I'm not that familiar with. I think it's like 50s, 60s maybe, blues singer. Anyway, so closest, of course, it sounds closest to the Aerosmith version. It's okay, to be honest, it's not one of my go-to songs from this EP. But yeah, they, of course, they're a good band. They do a pretty good. It's a good hard rock song. So yeah, it's all right. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I was going to finish with this one, and this could be, and this example could be another future show, which I'm sort of thinking might be cover songs you didn't know were cover songs by hair metal bands. So, Pretty Boy Floyd, Leather Boys with Electric Toys is the album, and they do a song on here called Toast of the Town. I think probably a lot of people do know that that's a cover song if you're familiar with Motley Crue or you're familiar with hair metal or have some knowledge of 80s hard rock. Toast of the Town, of course, is originally a Motley Crue song, but it wasn't on Too Fast for Love. It was a B-side. I think it was the B-side to Stick to Your Guns, a 7-inch single. Might be on some other post, released later on or early versions of the album. I'm not sure, but basically the version, that song is not on most copies of Motley Crue's debut album. So they knew about this song and decided to cover it, which is a pretty cool idea, I thought. So yeah, Toast of the Town. It's okay song. That first Motley Crue album's got lots of great songs. That could have fitted on there really nicely, would have been totally fine. Good song. They do a totally acceptable version of it. Yeah, so there we go. Pretty Boy Floyd and Toast of the Town. And that's it. So that's end of part 2. Hair metal bands, cover songs, my favourite and least favourite. As I said, maybe we're not going to hopefully get into some sort of debate of that band wasn't hair metal, that one was, or whatever. They're just bands I have in my collection. Whether they are or aren't hair metal or hard rock or whatever you want to call them. I thought they're good examples of some cover songs, by those bands. So let me know what you think. I'm sure there's more I could probably show, but those are the ones I came up with as I was going through my collection. But let me know of some other ones, maybe if you've seen part 1 and you've seen part 2, some other ones that might be interesting to talk about. Sometimes people tell me, oh, that's a cover song. And I'm like, oh, really? I had no idea. But just because I hadn't bothered to, read the credits, or even when I have read the credits, it wasn't obvious to me that it was a cover song. So, let me know of some interesting ones or good ones that you recommend checking out. Of course, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button if you enjoy this type of content. And I'll be back later on with some more. Okay, we'll see you then. Bye.